Hello, I am petroonishchuk. This video about GETRequest and SwiftUI. In this video, I will make GETRequest by using escape enclosures and also by using async away. For make our GETRequest, I will using this free IP. Link for this IP I put below in description. With this free IP, I will make GETRequest for list of users and also for single user. Okay, next I want to create our project. And first, what I want to create in our project is file with our model, what I will be using in our project. For example, now you can see I create a new project, URLSession and GetRequest async away. And first file what I create page plus user model. In the other file we have our model for decoded data what will be take when we will be make our GetRequest. First, how you can see, when we will be make a GetRequest for single user, we will be have this JSON data. This JSON data holds a two objects, user and also support. How you can see, we create a two structure. We create structure user for decoding this data what hold our data key value, and also we create a structure support for decoded data what hold support key value in our JSON data. All this data will be hold our structure all user data. How you can see, all user data object will be hold user with user and also support with support data. This is data for user. This is data for support. And also, how you can see, we create a coding keys for decoding our data. For our user, will be decoding our data from value first name to value first name in our user structure. And also last name to value last name in our user structure. And also, we create coding keys for our all user data. Our user property must hold value for user object. And in our JSON data key value holds value of our user property, and we set value from our data key to our user property. And also, to work with our GetRequest with list of users, we create our page structure. When we will be work with our GetRequest with list of users, we will take data of page. Our data of page holds some value. First is value of page per page, total page. And also, how you can see, we have a data what hold list of user, and also we have a support on the end. And also, we create coding keys for decoding this data with a value for per page to value per page property in our page structure, and also value for total page and data page to our total page in our structure and all user in our structure. Because our page structure will behold all users, this array of our user object, and also support, how you can see, support on the end of our JSON data. And also I create enum myRequestError. I'll be using this enum for show error when we'll be make our GETRequest by using escaping clauses and also by using async away when we'll be make our GETRequest. This is our model. Next, what I want to create is our network class. Inside our network class, we will make our method for create our GETRequest by using escaping clauses and also by using async away. For example, and now you can see I create a new file, NetworkGETRequest. Inside the file we have NetworkGETRequest class. Inside the class we have a couple of functions. Each function we create to make our GETRequest. Let's start with first. First we have our function UserGetRequest. This is our first function for make our GETRequest. This is function we use it with our escaping clauses. Escaping clauses give us ability to work our function asynchronously. This means our function can run his process on background thread, and then when this process will be completed, we can return process from our function from background thread to main thread. With escaping clauses, we can return a result. Our result can be successful and also can be failure. When our result is successful, we will be returned HTTP URL response and all user data object. And also, if our result not successful, will be returned an error. First, let's see what we have in our function. First, we create our URL by using URL component. How you can see, we use URL component, same close path, and also then we create our URL. Next, we create URL request by using our URL. Then we set our HTTP method to get, but it's optional, because when we don't set our HTTP method to get, our HTTP method by default will be get. And when we want to create our POST request, we must set our HTTP method to POST. That means, if we don't tap HTTP method to get, that means by default our request HTTP method will be GetRequest. And also we add value to our request. And next we run our data task function from URLSession by using our request. That means we will take data from our API by using request what we create, by using our URL, and then by using our URL request. Our data task function in our URLSession have escaping clauses. That means when we make our request by using data task function and our process is completed, data task function returns escaping clauses with 3 values: data, response, and error. Next, we check if we have an error. If we have an error, we take our completion handler and return failure with error what we check when we make our data task function. Next, we check if we have a response. If we don't have any response, we also take our completion handler and inside our completion handler we return failure result with our myRequestError enum invalid HTTP URL response. Next, we take our status code from our response status code, and then we check if our status code contains value from 200 to 299. If our value of status code don't contain inside value from 200 to 209, we take our completion handler and return failure with our myRequestError and set server-side error with response and put inside our error value of status code, and then we will see which value of status code we have an error. And if we check our status code and our check is successful, we move to the next step. We check if we have a data. If we don't have a data, we also return failure with our error myRequestError dot invalid data. And on the end, we using toTrackage block for decoding our data. How you can see, next we create our decoder by using our JSON decoder, and then we try to use decode our data by using decoder to our all user object from our data. With this concept, we will make GET request of single user data. How you can see, in this API, when we make GET request for single user, we must return this data from value data of our user, and also with support. That means we will decode this data to our all user object. How you can see, our all user object called user, this data for user, and also support for support. At the end, if our decoder is successful, we return our completion handler with successful value, with our two data, response and also with data new user. This new user, this data what we decode from our JSON data, what we get when we make our GET request. But if our decoder is not successful, we catch this error and return this error by using our completion handler .failure and put inside our failure result decoding error. And on the end, how you can see, we type it resume. Don't forget about resume, because without this command, we don't run our data task method from our URLSession for take data from our API by using GETRequest. Okay, this is our method for make our GETRequest by using escaping clauses. Next, also, you can see we create another method, UserGetRequest async. In this function, we will also make our GETRequest the same data from our API, but in this example, we don't will be using escaping clauses, we'll be using async method with await statement. From the start, it's very similar. We create our URL by using URL component. Next, we create our URL. Next, we create our GETRequest. It's the same code, what we type when we create our GETRequest with escaping clauses. But next, for run our request, we're using our data for method in our URL session. This is async method. That means for run our async method, we must type in await and also try. We type in try because this method can throw an error. If this process is not successful, method data for request will be throw an error, and our method UserGetRequest async await will be throw an error. If this process is successful, we move to the next step. Next step is similar like in our escaping closure. We check our responder. Next, we check our status code. If we don't have successful status code, we return an error. And on the end, we're using toTry-catch block for decoding our data. We create decoder, then we try to decode our data, what hold inside our data, what we take from our API by using URLSession.shared.data for request. And if our decoder is successful, we return our two values, response and user object. We return these two values, HTTP URL response and all user data object. But if our decoder not successful, we check this error and throw this error by using throw, decoding, and error. Async method gives us ability to run our code asynchronously. When we create our function, we type in async before value what we want to return. And also we have a throw value. That means our method can throw an error. In this function, error we can throw couple times. In this place, in this place, in this, and also in this place we can throw an error if all is not successful. But in this place we can return our data if all successful. But don't forget, when our code runs and we return this value, this means our process can be run in background thread. And when we want to update UI, we must return our process of the main thread. Okay, this is our async await method for run our GET request for take our data from our API. And also, how you can see, we have a last method. In this method, we can run our escaping clauses by using our async await method. We create our UserGetRequest escaping and async await method. With this method, we will run our UserGetRequest method is our escaping clauses. This is our method with escaping clauses, what we create previously. And with check throw continuation method, we can run our method with escaping clauses. How you can see, we run this method and the result is our value what we return by using our escaping clauses. And then we check if our result is successful, we return a data with response and new user. If our check is value, we return an error. That means this error will be returned through this line of code. If all successful, we must return value with HTTP URL response and all user data. Okay, in first time, I'll create a three method. First method for run our GET request by using escaping clauses, and also method for run our GET request by using async await method, and also method for run our escaping clauses by using async await method. And next, for run this method and display data in our application, first I must create a ViewModel, and also I must create a view for display this data. For example, And now, how you can see, I create our view model and also I create our view for display our data. And now I run a simulator and try to explain how our application works. For example, now you can see I run a simulator and now move to our main content view. Inside our main content view, we have navigation link to our single user request view. This is our link. This is our main content view. And now move to our single user request view. This is our single user request view. First, we have our view model. We pass this view model through environment. In our app structure, we create our state object for our view model and pass this object to our environment by using environment object. Next, in our single user request view, we have a list. Inside the list, we have a couple sections. First section for display data for our user. For display data, we're using single user view. How you can see, this is our single user view for display this data. This is our single user view for display first name, last name, ID, and also for display an image. We're using async image for download data by using URL. If our download is not successful, we display a system image. And now, if data is empty, that means we display our system image. If failure, if empty, and if allowed default. If our download is successful, we display our image and using setup for this image. Next section, how you can see, we have button section. This button section, we have a 3 button for our GET request and also 1 button for clean user field. For clean field for our user. Let's start with first button. First button is run escaping with GET request. This is escaping with GET request. When we tap to this button, we will run function in our view model. This is our function for run GET request with escaping closure. When we tap to this button, we must display data in our section for data. As you can see, when we tap to this button, we run this function. That means we run our function with escaping closures in our NetworkGETRequest class. This property holds our NetworkGETRequest class. How you can see, I create this property. And next, when we run this function, we have escaping closures. This escaping closures return a result. Our result can be successful and failed. If our result is successful, he returns a tuple with response and new user. We check our result. If our result is successful, we take this tuple with responser and new user object. And then, how you can see, inside our dispatch queue main async, we assign our value new user to our main user property in our view model. When we assign value to our main user, we display this data in our application. And because escaping closure run in background thread, and when our escaping closure is completed and we can assign our value to our main user property in our view model, we must move from our background thread to main thread. For this, we using our dispatch queue for assign our value to our main user property in main thread, because when we assign this value to this property, we will be change our view in our application. And we must change our view in our application only on the main thread. And how you can see, if we have a failure, we print our failure. That means we print our error, what we catch. And now we have also button clear user field. With this button, we assign empty user for our property. How you can see, I assign empty user to our property. That means a clear field for our user data. We can also run this process on the main thread. Okay, now to the next button. Run our GET request with async away. As you can see, when we tap to this button, we will run function in our view model. Run user GET request async away. This is our function, what will be run, our method for run our GET request with async away. Our function is async because we will run an async function from our NetworkGETRequest. And inside this function, we using two try catch block for run our function from our NetworkGETRequest. We will run function user GET request async away. And also, if we run successful our method, will be returned value responsive and new user object. And then will be assigned new user object to our main user in our ViewModel. And also, when we run our async method, that means this method will be run on the background thread. On the end, we must return our process on the main thread. For this, we can write our dispatch queue.main, but also we can create a main actor. We can create main actor to each function what we want to return to the main thread. We can also make our ViewModel main actor. How you can see, I set our main actor. That means async function in this ViewModel will be returned on the main thread on the end when our function will be completed. And also, if we have an error, we print an error. And now I tap to this button. When you tap to this button, we download data and also we download image. That means our method works correctly. And now I tap to clean user field. And next move to the third button. Our third button will be run method run UserGetRequest with its habit and async away. This is our button. When we tap to this button, we run function from our ViewModel run UserGetRequest escaping async away. We will run this method. When we run this method, we will be run our method from our NetworkGETRequest .UserGetRequest escaping and async away. When we tap to this button, how you can see, we have the same data, and also we have an image. That means our function works correctly. In this example, we also assign value what we take from our method new user to our main user property. And also, because our ViewModel in the main actor, that means our function will be returned to the main thread on the end when our function will be completed. And also, we have an error. If we have an error, we return an error. This is our three functions what we run through our ViewModel would hold our NetworkGETRequest. How you can see, each three get requests we have in our NetworkGETRequest class. And then through ViewModel, we run each method would hold in our NetworkGETRequest class. With this GetRequest, we get value by using this IP. We get this value, data and support. And also add our support section for display this support data. And also I add a support section for display data in our support. How you can see, we have a support URL and text. Now you can see all work correctly. How you can see, we create a GET request from our IP by take data for single user with data and support data. And now I want to create code to make a GET request for list of users. How you can see, will be create this GET request with query items and also with this JSON data. And then we will be decoding this data and display in our application. For example, And now I want to explain what I create. First, move to our NetworkGETRequest service. Inside this class, we create couple methods. In first variant, we will make our GETRequest by using escaping clauses. We will take data from our API. How you can see, we will make our GETRequest and take this data. And then we will decode this data and display in our application. In our method, first we create our URL by using URL component, then we create our URL, then we create our request by using URLSession, and also we using URLSession data task function. And then we check if we have an error. If we don't have an error, we return failure with error. Then we check if we have a response. If we don't have response, we return failure with our make request unknown invalid HTTP URL response. And also we check our status code from our response status code. Then we check our data. If we don't have a data, we return failure with my request error invalid data. And on the end, we using two-try catch block by decoding our data. How you can see, we create decoder and then we try to decode our data in our page object. We will decode this data to our page object. And then, if all successful, we return successful with response and also with our object new page. This is our structure what we'll be using for decoding our data. And also we have method for make our PageGetRequest with async away. How you can see, we also create our URL by using URL component. Next we create our request, and then we use our URLSession data for request and take our data and respond if all successful. If not successful, we will throw an error. And then if all successful, we check if we have a response, and also we check our status code. On the end, we try to decode our data by using decoder, and then we decode our data to our page object. And on the end, we return our value, our response, and also new page object. And if we have an error, we throw an error, decoding error. And on the end, we have a method for work with our escaping clauses and also with async away. How you can see, we'll be using async away method for run our escaping clauses PageGetRequest escaping. And then we check our result. If all successful, we return our response and new page object. If failed, we throw an error. And this error we throw in this page. These three methods we plus it in our NetworkGETRequest. Our three methods very similar like our method for make our UserGetRequest. But in this variant will be decoded our page data. Will be decoded this data. And we try to run our UserGetRequest will be decoded this data for single user. And this data for page object. And also I create a new method in our ViewModel. First, how you can see in our ViewModel, first I create method for run our PageGetRequest with escaping clauses. How you can see, I using our NetworkGetRequest property, what hold our NetworkGetRequest class, and then we run our PageRequest escaping clauses and take data what return our escaping clauses and check. If we have successful data, that means we have a response and new page object. And then for return our process on the main thread, we using dispatch queue, and inside our main dispatch queue, we assign our value to our main page property. And then we'll be display this value in our application. If we have an error, we check. If we have an error, we take this error and print this error. Next method what I create for run our PageGetRequest with async away. How you can see, I create this method for run our PageGetRequest async away from our NetworkGetRequest class. And then, how you can see, I using two-try catch block for run our PathGetRequest async away method, because our PageGetRequest async away method can throw an error. And then we try to run our method. If all successful, we assign a new value to our main page. But if we have an error, we print an error. And on the end, we have a method for run our getRequest with escaping clauses and async away. In this example, we run method PageGetRequest escaping and async away. And in this method, we're also using two-try catch block, because our PageGetRequest escaping and async away method can throw an error. And we try to run this method If all successful, we assign value to our main page. If we have an error, we print an error. We assign this value to our main page property for holds our ViewModel. And in this example, when we set this value, we return this process on the main thread. Because we make our ViewModel by main actor. That means our async function will be returned on the main thread when we assign value to our main page property. Okay, this is what I create in our ViewModel and also in our new NetworkGETRequest class. And now I run a simulator and show you how look our application and try to display this data by using our PageGetRequest. For example, right now when we run our simulator, we have our main content view, and now we move to our PageRequest view. Our PageRequest view have couple sections. First section for info for our page. Second section, info for support. And on the bottom, we will have list of our users. And also, how you can see, we have couple buttons. And now I change this button for clean page field. And move to our first button. First button will be run our get request with the escaping clauses. How you can see, will be run our run page request escaping. And now, when we tap this button, we will display this information. How you can see, we display information for page info, for support, and also list of users. This means all work correctly. And now I tap to clean our field. Second button, make our get request with async away. We will run our run page request async away from our get up ViewModel. How you can see, we also display this data. On the bottom, we have a list of our users. And on the end, we will be run our PageGetRequest escaping and async away method for display this data. How you can see, all work correctly, and we have a list of our users. And now, how you can see, I create a method for make our getRequest for user object by using escaping clauses, async away, and also async away and escaping clauses together, and also for run our getRequest for page object by using escaping clauses, async away, and also escaping clauses and async away. And on the end, I want to create our GET request for work with local server. For create our local server, I will be using Golang. And next, I want to create couple functions for work with our local server. And then I show you how work our iOS project with our local server. For example, And now I want to explain what I create. First, inside our NetworkGETRequest class, I create a new method, UserGetRequest, async away, and local. This method I create will make our GET request by using our localhost. How you can see, this method async throw. That means this method can throw error or must return value, HTTP URL response, and array of user objects. With this method, we'll be create our GET request by using our localhost. First, we create our URL. How you can see, this is our URL to our localhost. Value for our localhost will be 5000. Next, we create our URL by using URL component. Next, we create our request by using URL request. And then we try to request our data by using URLSession data for request. And if our request is successful, we move to the next step. And if our request not successful, how you can see, we use try await. That means we'll be throw an error. Next, we check our response. We take our status code. We check our status code. And when we check our status code, and if we found an error of value of our status code, we return a value by using our myRequestError enum. And then we try to decode our data by using our JSON decoder. And next we try to decode our data by array of user objects. And then if our decoder is successful, we return value, our response value, and also our new user property. This property holds array of user objects. And if our decoder not successful, we throw an error. Okay, this is our method in our NetworkGETRequest class. Next, move to our ViewModel. And then inside our ViewModel, we create a function for run our UserGetRequest async away local method from our NetworkGETRequest class. And then we try to run our method. And if our request is successful, we have value of response and also array of user objects. If our request not successful, we will catch an error and print our error. And then, if our request is successful, we take value which holds our new user property. This value will be array of our user object. And inside this value to our property in our myPage property dot all users. How you can see, all users property holds array of user object. And when we assign value to our main page property in our ViewModel, this means we will display this data in our application. This means we will assign this value on the main thread. For this, we create our ViewModel main actor. How you can see, we create our ViewModel main actor. This means we will return our process from the background thread to the main thread. Okay, this is our NetworkGETRequest class and also our ViewModel. And now I run a simulator and show you our view. For example, next, move to our local users view. How you can see, our local users view have a list with couple sections. First section for our two buttons. First button for make our GET request. How you can see, we using task, and inside the task we write await and run our GET request by using our ViewModel dot run user GET request async away with local. And also we have a button for clean our field. And also on the button we have a section for display of list of our user what we take when we make our GET request. How we said previously, we will make our GET request by using our local server. I create our local server by using Go language. Link to video where I create our local server I put below in description. And now we must run our local server, and next on the server I show you what data will be displayed in our iOS device. For example, and now you can see on the right side we have our local server. I create local server by using Go language. First is our main Go file. Inside our main Go file we have our main function. Through this function we will run our local server. First, how you can see, for make our GET request we must have on the end of our URL /users. How you can see, this is our URL. End of our URL, users. And when we make our URL, we must run our function handle user request. This function we pass it inside our server user.go file. And also for run our server, I take value 5000. And now when we move to our Xcode project, for our local server we have value 5000. That means our URL is correct. And also when we create our URL, we add our query item with name page and value 2. And now we move to our handler UserRequest method. This method checks what method we have, GetRequest or POST Request. In this example, we have a GetRequest. And when we have a GetRequest, we check our query item. If we have key page with value 2, this means our GetRequest is correctly. And then if our GetRequest is correctly, we must set value to our iOS device. And now I try to show you what data we want to set. We want to set data on whole property getUserObject. We want to set data on whole property getUser. How you can see, inside file getUser.go we have property getUser. This property holds slice of getUserObject. We'll take this data, convert this data to JSON data, and send to our iOS device. And then in our iOS device we decode this data and convert to our array of user objects. How you can see, this data holds email, first name, last name, and avatar. And also, this is our model for getUsers. And when we decode our data, our ID starts from the lowercase email, first name will be have value first name, last name, and avatar from the lowercase. And now you can see, we try to encode this data, and by using our responsive writer, send this data to our iOS device. If we have an error, we return an error. And now I try to run our server and make our GET request by using our iOS device and also our local server. For example, now we run our application and we run our server by using go run and dot. In this example, how you can see, we run our main file without typing name of our main file, because we create our common file. Common file we can use it for work with third-party dependency and also for simply run our application. Okay, we run our simulator, and now we move to our UserGetRequest with localhost. And now we have two buttons. First button for make our GetRequest, and then when we tap to this button, we must make our GetRequest and display this data in our application. When we tap to this button, we must request data will hold our getUser variables. As you can see, when we tap to this button, we download this data. We have first name, last name, ID. We download each image for our user. This means our iOS application works correctly, and also our local server works correctly. Link to video where I create this local server I put below in description. And on the end, when I run a simulator, I have this error. This is because I make our whole ViewModel main actor. And now I change it. I delete main actor for our ViewModel and set main actor for each function what will be run our code asynchronously and then must return to the main thread. For example, and now when I run a simulator, we don't have this error. This is the end of my video. In this video, I try to show you how you can make GET request by using escaping clauses and also by using async away. And also how you can make GET request by using local server. This is the end. Thank you for watching.